Hello everybody, my name is Rob Smith. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the president of the Homeowners Association for Almond, Glen, and one of the board members. Wanted to kind of take a few minutes to update people. I've had a lot of questions come in regarding the budget, some of the processes that are going on here in the neighborhood. I know there was questions as to why I put the information out the way I did, as opposed to maybe the way I've communicated information in the past. And I want to kind of answer those questions real quickly. This is not going to take the place of necessarily a January meeting. We generally try to hold a meeting in the January time frame to kind of give a 6-month update, but this will be kind of the same kind of information you'll get in a January meeting. This is going to be information that I'm taking the time to provide to you. This is not necessarily board information because I don't have the entire board's opinion on all the things that I'm going to just try to quickly gloss over. I'm also going to try to keep the video relatively short, which is going to be difficult considering the amount of information I want to put out. The first thing that I want to go ahead and get out of the way is everything's going well with the pool. The pool is looking like everything's set. We've gone into winterization mode up there. They've winterized the sprinkler system. They've winterized the pumps. Or correction, I'm sorry, not the pumps. The pump house itself, where the bathrooms and everything are, and the main spigots coming in and out where the water lines are. The pump itself has to run all winter long, so that'll continue to run. Everything's tested though and is looking good, and we did get clearance from DHEC to take the pool over because it was still technically in the hands of Lennar and really their contractor. But that was handed over successfully, and part of that was just passing all of our inspections. The next thing that we'll have to do is wait for our official permit to come through, and with permitting we'll be able to open up in the spring as usual. So 2015 pool season is looking good. And as part of that, one of the things that we'll be doing is planning our spring, I don't know what we'll call it, but a spring fling or a spring fair or whatever they decide to call it this year. That'll be one of the things that they'll try to do. And we'll be looking for volunteers. We've done away with the committees, and one of the committees that we did away with officially was the social committee. Now, the social committee still exists technically in that Alicia Jones generally has tried to keep things going with different social events, and we still have people from around the neighborhood who have always been good volunteers, and we're going to continue to reach out to them. And I know we have a lot of new families and new people in the neighborhood who might be interested in helping with those things. So at some point we'll send out kind of feelers looking to see who's interested in being on that committee for that specific event. And that's what we'll do from now on, rather than try to have a committee that is responsible for everything, whether it be an event of some sort, or if we decide to do some of the spring flowers ourselves, do the plantings, things like that. Rather than have committees, we'll switch to technically what we kind of did with the planting was we just said, hey, we're going to plant flowers, who can help? It'll be the same thing. Hey, we're planning a spring event, who can help? So look for that information to come along. If you are interested, you could reach out to Alicia Jones. You could get her through our Almond Glen email, which is almondglenhoa@gmail.com. So you can just reach out to Alicia and just tell her you're interested in helping with the spring event, and we'll put you on a list of, what will hopefully be a long list of volunteers who can help out with getting that done. And we want to make that a big event, spring and fall. Fall was kind of a big deal this year. In addition to being able to squeeze in that little Oktoberfest at the end, they were able to pull together the kind of mid-summer, late end of summer thing, and that was a big deal. We liked having the food trucks and the water slides, and we would hope to do the same thing again in the spring in conjunction with opening the pool. So with that out of the way, I'll move on to more of the latest hot topic, and there's really two hot topics right now. The first hot topic is the landscaping, which is something that has been a hot topic for the board for months now. For various reasons, the sprinkler system not working properly. I laughed at some of the comments that came out and some of the questions that came to me. People were saying it doesn't take that long to fix a sprinkler system. And I can promise you it did take that long to fix a sprinkler system, because that's how long it took. And it wasn't necessarily that we wanted it to take that long. In fact, I can tell you right now, I did not want it to take that long. But saying that it doesn't take that long to fix something doesn't fix the fact that we just had the wrong vendor, really, in my opinion. We're not really happy with our current landscaper. We're looking for other landscapers. U.S. Lawns is one of the last contracts that we've not specifically gone and looked at and really whittled down. We went very hard at the management contract when we were still under Hawthorne. And then when we moved away from Hawthorne to Association Management Group, we were very, very strict on that contract. Chris Martin was really instrumental in just whittling that contract down to even what we pay for the cost of a copy or a fax. It's very whittled down. There are some things in there that we cut completely out that are normal functions of the management company. There are other things that we managed to get done at a better price. It's a good contract. In fact, I've handed that contract off to other associations who were looking for management companies so that they would be able to come in on the same playing ground that we did. So we've done that with our Aquatech contract. We've done that with just each of our contracts we've gone in. And U.S. Lawns is one that we've not gone after yet, and unfortunately it's affected us in that we've been dealing with U.S. Lawns and we've really not been getting the kind of service we want. So I now have to switch modes from being a part-time pool expert to trying to be a landscaping expert. Myself and other members of the board will be trying to learn everything we can about what we should be expecting of a landscaping company for the type of work we need done around the neighborhood and how they do the work. I've had several people in the neighborhood who are landscapers who have worked with landscaping companies give me some insight to that, but sometimes it's just a matter of you almost have to become an insider so that you can get these contracts. So it's like going out and buying a used car or even a brand new car. If you've bought and sold cars before, you're going to get a better deal. Same thing. So we'll be looking at that contract. We got to the point where the winter moved in the way it did. If you recall, about the time the sprinkler system got done, we started getting problems with the weather. It got really cold, and we made the decision, and it was, I don't know if it was a decision so much as an indecision. I did not go to the board and say, can we spend $2,500 on flowers to have U.S. Lawns put flowers in the planters around the neighborhood. No other board member came to me or any of the other board and said, hey, can we get some flowers put in? So nobody from the board wanted to do it at that point. And that makes perfect sense. I know why I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it because the weather changed cold and to the point where it was too cold to run the sprinkler system anymore. We were going to put new flowers in. The flowers wouldn't be able to be watered. I had a landscaper tell me, don't put flowers in, they'll just die. And we made the decision to not spend the money. The cheapest route would have been to get volunteers out there, and I didn't have time to do it. And if I don't have time to do something, I generally don't ask somebody else to do it. So I would have had to pay a vendor to put $2,500 worth of flowers in. It didn't seem like good business sense. It seemed like a waste of money. I like flowers. I like the way they look. You can drive by my house and see where my wife planted pansies when the weather changed and we didn't need a sprinkler system. We watered it by hand. So we like flowers just fine, but we didn't do flowers because it didn't work out. Which was fine because in the spring, the board wants to spend a lot of money on the entrances. We would like to do something as you come in the main entrance. You come in down Almond Glen Road there, Almond Glen Drive, whatever it's called there, Almond Glen. And on the left and right are some hills that we own as an association, and we'd like to improve the look of those. Even if it's just something as simple as what's on Regent Parkway with the pine needles and the different plants that are there, that's what we want to do, something to kind of spruce things up. So there's going to be a lot of money spent. We had bids coming in on those areas that were in the $8,000 to $10,000 range that some of our former board members thought was just a great thing. They thought $10,000 for the side of that hill with flowers that had to be maintained constantly would be a wonderful thing. And fortunately, the rest of the board was very strong and said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to spend $10,000 on a bunch of flowers that we're going to have to spend a lot of money to do maintenance on. It would look beautiful, but this is not Disneyland. It's Almond Glen neighborhood. So we had to go back to the landscaper several times and say, give us a bid on what we want. So at this point, we're not very happy with our landscape company, so why would we give them more business, more money, and more control? So we decided to wait for spring, and we're going to look for better landscapers, and we're going to try to come at that process a different route. Right now, I think our contract for next year's budget, and I'd have to actually look at the budget, but I want to say it was somewhere in the 29, and I apologize, I'm doing this more as though I'm just sitting here having a conversation. I believe we're somewhere in the $29,000 range for 2015's budget for landscaping, and that's just the overall maintenance budget. That's mowing the grass and doing things around the neighborhood. That is not the actual, going and putting down pine needles. That's not going around the neighborhood and adding flowers. Like I said, that's an over and above. Sorry, it's over and above the cost of the actual landscape contract. So looking at the business budget, which we have a budget that is prepared to come out, and hopefully we'll get that out. We have to wait for the final votes to come in from everybody else in the neighborhood. But our landscape contract for the single-family home area around the neighborhood, we're looking at $7,176 of our landscape contract goes to the single-family homes, and $21,768 for the landscaping contract around the townhomes. So for anybody in the townhomes who has a question of what does my money go to pay for, I don't feel like I'm getting my money's worth. You're getting $21,000 worth of landscaping. That's a total of $28,944 that we're paying to have U.S. Lawns do our landscaping. That sounds high to me, but I don't know. I'm not a landscaping guy, so I'm going to learn about landscaping so that we can attack that, because I would love to see that number come down. I think it's just too much. And that might affect things like not having to raise dues in the future. If we could shave off a good chunk of money, then the next board coming in for 2015-2016, starting in July, they won't have to worry about raising dues. And that would be a good thing, obviously. I mean, nobody wants to raise dues. Nobody wants to be the unpopular guy who raised dues. So, segueing over to the budget. We've worked on the budget. Every meeting, we work on the budget. I have questions about why we did it in such a quick fashion. Why did we rush to judgment? Nothing that we accomplish is rushed. We can't get anything done quickly. One, by design, because the way the meetings are set up, we're actually only required by the bylaws to have a quarterly meeting of the board. And if you could just imagine waiting for a quarterly meeting to come around to get anything done, nothing would get done. Anybody who has tried to get something approved in the neighborhood, and generally if it goes, I would say most of them go successfully and very quickly. Some of them have been delayed. So I'm sure there's somebody who can say, well, I had a hard time getting this approved. But generally, if you need something approved, the absolute best way to do it is the Almond Glen way, which is you can come over to Rob Smith's house, knock on the door, and if I'm home, I'll sign your paperwork. We'll go over it. We'll figure it out. I've lived in HOAs before. You can't usually do that. Normally, you have to send it in to the management company, and if you even know who the board members are, you're lucky. We know more about who the board members are and who lives in our neighborhood and how to get things done than most people who lived in small apartment buildings and condo associations and small buildings. And anybody who's lived in those types of environment, I would invite you to talk about some of the horror stories that you have when you come across those types of boards. We're not that kind of board. We never have been. It's the only reason I was interested in getting on the board in the very beginning in 2013 is because I felt like the board needed to be open, the board needed to be available, and at this last year I said that I wanted to be reinstated as a board president, and somebody asked, and I can't remember who it was, I apologize, but whoever it was asked me why. I had stated there's no more power being the president, and flat out, I said at the time, it's because it's what I'm good at. This is what I'm good at, interacting with people and giving information out. I don't hold information back from anybody, so thinking that I'm trying to keep something secret from you is just silly. I don't do it. The board meetings have always been open to anybody in the neighborhood who wants to come to a board meeting. They're open because our bylaws say they're open. So even if I wanted to make a secret meeting and I allow you to come to it, I can't because the bylaws say that I have to have them open. Now, we have several things we could do as far as having those meetings. We can have the meetings where we have a big signboard that we buy, and we've looked at trying to buy signboards, but they're expensive, so we've not allotted the money for them. But we could put a big signboard out at each of the entrances, and when it's time for a board meeting, we could put a big announcement up, and then we could rent a hall every single time, and we could spend that money to do that. Well, we did that in December because people said we were having secretive board meetings, and 3 people came. Actually, 2 members, technically, because a husband and wife came, so that's 1 member vote if we were having some sort of member vote, and then the other member that came. So we had 3 people came, and I appreciated them coming, and I also appreciate that not coming to the meeting doesn't mean you don't care. I appreciate and understand that not everybody can make it to the meeting. The reason our meetings aren't every 3rd Tuesday or something like that is, again, the way we wanted the board to function, the way I thought it should function, was for us to keep the meetings kind of a moving target where we can schedule around what's available. Generally what happens is I look at my schedule, because I have one of the weirdest schedules. I look at my schedule and I send out meeting dates to all the board members, and then each of those board members strike off meeting dates that are not good for them, and everybody sends me their list of of my meeting dates, what works for them. Hopefully, if everything works out, we get 2 dates out of that compiled list, and that gives us a meeting date and an alternative in case something happens. So that hopefully, if you're thinking about being on the board in the future, hopefully that makes it easier, because I know right now if you told me that I had to be at a meeting every 3rd Thursday of the month, and if you miss 3 meetings, because of just not being able to make it, the board, you're removed from the board. So if I told you every 3rd Thursday of the month I need you to be there, that might be poker night with the guys, or Girl Scout night, or any one of a million different things that we as working and parent, we're working people, we're parents, we're busy, we just don't have time for it. So I wouldn't get anybody that would want to join the board, and then we just wouldn't have the pool of candidates that we do. Not everybody in this neighborhood's retired, so we need to keep those meetings available. So we could post those meetings up on a big board, and we could rent the hall, and we could spend the money, but people don't want to come to the meetings, they don't have the time to come to the meetings. It's just the way it is. And there's no way for us to say, hey, we're going to have a meeting where we're going to discuss financial changes and that a budget meeting or something like that in November. We can't do that. Why can we not do that? Well, because we don't know if we're going to discuss just those things in November. I can't tell you in July. You got to remember our board picks up and starts in July. So let's assume that I don't run for the board in 2015. And nobody that's on the current board wants to come back. They've all had enough of it and they're out. So we need a whole new board. So we get 5 brand new board members. If we're lucky, 5 people are willing to come in and take over, knowing that they'll have nobody to guide them. We get 5 brand new board members in July. And in 2015, towards the end of 2015, they have to make all their budget decisions in December, because that's when our budget comes out. And I'm sorry that that's at Christmas time. The only thing I can tell you is plan that in Christmas time you'll probably have to deal with dues increases. The dues can never go up by, I think it's more than 6%, at least my understanding of the way it's written, so without special assessments and without a neighborhood vote. So for the most part, you can assume the dues will go up by no more than 6% in December. I have to deal with it like everybody else in the neighborhood does. So I apologize to the different people throughout the neighborhood, and it's no problem. I read the comments, so I appreciate the comments. But I mean, really looking at it and saying, well, how come you tell us in December that we have dues go up? Because the budget comes out in December. That's the way it is. So we do our budget in December. We put the budget together, and we try to get things figured out throughout the year. Another thing you have to remember about the budget, it's really been hard to put the budget together. Our plan as a board has been to basically work as hard as we can to get everything so that future boards will come in here and look back at all these troubles we have and go, gosh, this is so easy. Why couldn't Rob Smith get this together? I'm the greatest board president ever. Rob Smith didn't know what he was doing. Well, hopefully that's exactly the way it'll seem. I hope that I do such a good job now, and that my fellow board members, Alicia Jones, who's stayed with us for 2 years now, Sydney McIntyre, who's acted as the treasurer this year and was essentially the treasurer the first year because nobody wanted the job of treasurer. Bridget Desiree got stuck with the job, and we appreciated that she put herself in that position when it really wasn't something she wanted to do, and she didn't really know how to do it. She essentially organized the group who went and put that budget together. And Sydney McIntyre did that. So Sydney's given us 2 years, or is working on his 2nd year with us. Trey Hasty coming on the board, giving us a different point of view. And then Virginia Poe, same thing, or Pugh, I always mix it up. So same thing. And then prior to them, John Rodman and Chris Martin. We put all this effort into the board because we want it to work out for the future. We want everybody to think that the job's so easy. The 2013, when we came in, the board previous to us was all builder controlled, obviously. And that was a combination of the two companies who built in the neighborhood, Eastwood and Lennar. And of course, Landcraft set up. So between all these groups of different people, they had just done what they wanted with the board. They didn't have to meet. They produced a budget, but it was a poorly done budget. Hawthorne was the management company, and Hawthorne just made copies of the old budget. They didn't account for taxes, which we had to pay back then because it was developer owned. They didn't account for a proper reserve study. They didn't do an audit that I can ever see. We have to do an audit every single year, and we're going through and having an audit done this year for 2 years essentially because we didn't know the first year that we needed to have an audit. It was something that I discovered when I was reading through the paperwork. So we decided we have to have a 2-year audit now, and every year we're going to have another audit, which is a good thing because as a future member of the neighborhood, not a board member, I want those audits. I want things checked into. So we came in 2013 in July. For those who are new to the neighborhood and you don't know the history or why anybody says the things they say, 5 people were voted in 2013 and we took over in July and we had to put together the budget in December. Well, that was kind of hard to do considering everything had changed. We had made all kinds of changes to the contracts, and at that point we had to work on a new budget based on what we thought would happen. So we did that. The 2014 budget has been a budget made up by our group, recommended to us by Sidney McIntyre's at that time committee, and the financial committee put that information together and we voted it in and we did the best we could. That was 2014's budget. We've gone through 2014 with all kinds of crazy things. We have a false positive in the monies because of the pool not operating. That affects the water, that affects the electricity, the sprinkler system being down, but then we had to pay to fix the sprinkler system. There's just been so many things that 2014 we can't just copy that budget over to 2015. Then there's weird things that we throw in. Every board member has believed in some way or another that social stuff is good for the neighborhood. These things that we throw, these events we throw, they're not free. Before the neighborhood had control of the HOA budget, people would come together and do these little potlucks to try to make things work so we could get the neighborhood involved, because a neighborhood that talks to each other and knows each other is a safer neighborhood, and it's a neighborhood that's got better property values, that sells better. And I apologize to Trey Hasty if I'm using the wrong term for property values and marketability, but because it's been interesting to learn those things from him. But essentially, the neighborhood sells. This neighborhood sells. That's a proven fact. There's very few homes in this neighborhood that aren't selling when people put them on the market. We have people selling for sale by owner, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we are a very marketed community through the website that the HOA puts on, things like that. So we believe those community events are important to the neighborhood. We believe that there is value in those community events, and the first community event that we have that we spend money on and nobody comes to it, that'll be a signal to us from the community, we don't want these events. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. People enjoy them. We like getting together with our neighbors, we like knowing who our neighbors are, and we like that communication. So we're doing these things. We put those things into the budget. We actually, and the numbers aren't officially approved yet. So once the numbers get officially approved, we'll be able to get some more information out there. But we put money into the budget for those things. So we have to look at how we're going to do the budget in the future. We got a reserve study this year. That cost a pretty penny. And the reserve study, essentially what it does is they look at how much money do you need in the future to pay for the things you have. We have a lot of things throughout the neighborhood. Again, if somebody was to say to me, what is my money being used for? I don't see anything. It pays for, first of all, those events I was just talking about. And if you're not attending the events, I recommend you do. Second of all, it pays for the street that runs from Harrisburg to the front of the end of the townhomes there. All that road, we own that. We have to maintain that. It pays for the sidewalks throughout the neighborhood. We have to maintain those. Even if there's $0 spent on sidewalks today, I know in the future I have to fix the sidewalks if they're broken. So that means we have to set money aside to pay for it, because we only get money from our members. So you have a choice. You can pay for it now and put it away in savings, or you can wait until the future and you can pay for it. And I promise you, if you want to see your neighborhood not sell, put no money in reserves and see what happens. Because anybody who has any brains whatsoever, and if you're going to look at buying a future neighborhood, if you go to move, and I hope we don't lose anybody, because people love the neighborhood and I like my neighbors, but if you're moving for some reason, I would ask to see those financial documents of the new HOA, because if there's $0 in the budget, or if the budget, and you can legally do it, you can choose to not fund your budget properly. Some boards do that because they just don't have the money. So if they chose to not fund the budget, if there's $0 in there, and you see a pool, for instance, and you're able to figure out that the pool will one day need work on it, you would have no brains whatsoever if you moved to that neighborhood, because you're going to have to pay for it at some point. So the guy who lived there for 20 years before you, he never paid for those dues. He got away the whole time. He moves out, you move into his house, 2 years later there's a special assessment for thousands of dollars to pay for things. And it happens all the time. It happens constantly. You can go on the internet and research it. It's just continuous, where boards have just not spent money properly. So we put a lot of money into reserves. We are on par right now. Our goal right now is to put, in 2015, approximately, and I'm going to steal a little bit from Sidney McIntyre's information that he's provided to the board. Our goal right now is to put approximately $67,000 into the reserve account in 2015, which is good. That's what we need to do. And how do we know we need to do that? Because we have a reserve study done where somebody came out and walked the property and did an assessment of the different things we have, the roofs on the townhomes, the lighting throughout the neighborhood. I was talking about those things that we pay for. The street in front of the townhomes, all of the townhome parking lots, the huge retaining wall off of Kilchurn that's down in the ditch down there, retaining walls around the different parts of the property, as far as like around the townhomes, just all these different things. I think the fences technically that run along behind the townhomes, part of that is, well, all of that fencing back there along the roadway, that is all owned by the HOA. So all these different things. That's what your money's going to pay for, and we have to make sure we're accounting for that. So the goal is to put $67,000 away in 2015. Really, the goal is to put more than that if we could get it, but that's kind of where we're looking at. We asked Sidney McIntyre to look at the future and put together something, because I can't affect a future board, but I can certainly put our recommendations out there and make them publicly known so that people in the neighborhood know what to expect of their board. And we said to Sidney, if you were to be the treasurer for the next 20 years, how much money should the dues be going up? What percentage? So Sidney's putting that information together, and he's got some initial numbers for us that he's put out, and he's going to review those with the board, and then we'll make that available to the neighborhood as well. Because I think 5 years from now, let's say you have a completely irresponsible board who doesn't want to raise dues because they're afraid they'll make people mad, and they don't want their neighbors mad at them, or they don't want to make their friends upset, so they don't want to vote yes, because then my friends won't be happy with me. So say that happens in the future, 5 years from now, you should know what your neighborhood should be doing as far as the budget, because we don't all have time to sit down and study the budget. I don't have time to do that. Sidney does that for me. And then I just review what he tells me to review, and it makes sense. That's what you need to do, but we don't have time to do that. So you should know what to expect. How much should my dues go up to keep this neighborhood on track, because you want to be able to sell your house one day and make a profit. We all want to make a profit on our homes if we sell them. So he's going to put those numbers out, but his initial increase that was recommended this year was 1.57% for 2015, and we did that across the board. It looks like, looking at the paperwork, we can increase the townhomes separately from the single-family homes. But we decided to increase it across the board this year. That was the vote, and part of that was because the initial study of the documents showed we had to raise everything at the same time, but then when we went back and looked at it again, and the legal opinion is forthcoming, but it appears we can actually raise them separately. So that'll be a discussion for a future board. But initially, We wanted to raise the dues 1.57% because that increase across the entire neighborhood will actually help us all out. It'll keep the budget on track to spend money in the future, or with the reserves, which is what I'm looking for. So to keep us on track to spend the money on the reserves that we need in the future, so that we can keep things going, and also keep us on track with what we're currently doing. Now, there's a couple things that could affect the future of the neighborhood as far as the reserves, or not the reserves, but the budget. We could save money in the landscaping contract. I would like to see, like with anything else that we do, I would like us to find a way to get more value out of spending less money on the landscaping contract. We will be looking very hard at anybody who comes and talks to us about being our landscaper. And if you know somebody who owns a landscaping company that you think would be great for the neighborhood, I highly recommend you point them our direction, because we pay a lot of money for landscaping, and I think you could almost start a landscaping business off of what we pay for landscaping in this neighborhood. So, that's something we're going to look at. We could save money there. We could do different things with the lifeguards at the pool. And we can't have after-hours swimming in the dark, because we'd have to add stadium-style lighting up there, which would be an increased cost. So then we have to budget for that, obviously. Not to mention, I don't think anybody necessarily wants stadium lighting flowing up there. It wouldn't be the nighttime swimming kind of thing that you're going for. But, and we can't have adult-only swims. People have said, can you have adult-only swims? No, because we'll get federally sued. I mean, it's just the way it goes. I mean, somebody in the neighborhood right now is smart enough to get on the internet and do a quick Google and find out that if an HOA says we're going to have an adult-only swim, that's anti-family according to the courts, and that they can get a huge landfall lawsuit out of us. So, no, we're not going to do that. But we could do away with the lifeguards altogether, but then somebody's got to open the pool. We could go to a key card system, but then we got to spend money on a key card system. If there's no lifeguards at the pool, then you have to also contend with the fact that somebody might drown at the pool. There will be somebody who, if we have it so that as soon as it's daylight, you could go up there and swipe your key card and go in. Somebody will go up and do their laps every day. Probably multiple people will. And I think that's great, until somebody goes up there and has a heart attack in the pool swimming by themselves and drowns. And then I always have to deal with the fact that I had a pool that nobody could watch, and we didn't have a lifeguard on. So it's a hard decision to make. It's not, these aren't decisions we just make in a bubble where nobody's thinking. We've all got our input, and there's been arguments over these things at board meetings where we discussed it, and ultimately we've got lifeguards. But we could make changes to that. We could go with less lifeguards. We could go with an attendant instead of a lifeguard, which would just be somebody at the pool to kind of maintain the rules and kind of make sure that we don't have just a flood of people coming from other neighborhoods, that kind of thing. We could find other money in the budget. We could say cut the social budget in half. That was actually something that was discussed this time around. When we were discussing the 1.57% increase, the questions that were asked were, why are we raising the dues? Do we have to raise the dues? And one of the things that was recommended was, well, we just voted or made a decision to increase the social budget. Why don't we just cut that in half? And that would pay for the 1.57% increase. But nobody on the board wanted to do that. Nobody said, yeah, let's cut the budget. Nobody argued for that. That's where it died. So to vote no for the 1.57% increase, you had to have one of two thoughts. You had to say either, I don't think what the treasurer is recommending is sound, which he presented everything in a very sound manner. He knows what he's talking about, so I don't think that's true. Sidney McIntyre is lending us, I don't know what the man makes every year doing that kind of work for the logging company that he works for. He works for a company that does something with forestry things and logging. And that's what he does for a living. So I don't know what he makes, but he's lending us that experience and that money. He's saving us that cash, I guess. And because we don't want to leave the budget just solely in the hands of the management company. I love Danielle Rudisil to death. She is an excellent manager, and she's doing a great job for us. And I'm very, very happy with AMG. But you must trust but verify. So we trust what they're doing, but then we turn around and verify. And that's exactly what Sidney does for us. He's checking things and making sure it's good and giving recommendations. So to vote no to the 1.57% increase, you had to either vote no, I don't want the 1.57% increase because I don't think Sydney's right, or you would have to say, I just don't feel good about it. And you can't just go based on your feelings. I know there are a lot of people in the neighborhood who say, it's not a good idea. You know, I don't want to raise my money. And even if I presented to them, I'll have to turn the lights off throughout the neighborhood. They would rather see the lights go off almost. Or they want me to just magically keep the lights on without paying for it. And that's just not going to happen. So we voted to increase the dues because it was the responsible decision. We were voted for, hopefully, because everybody that listened to us and knows us in the neighborhood feels like we're responsible individuals who make good, responsible choices for the neighborhood, not just personal decisions for things we want. And that's the way it should be. You know, just because Rob Smith wants the most beautiful Disneyland entrance at the front of the neighborhood ever doesn't mean that Rob Smith should get it. That should be a decision that the whole board makes, and even I, if that's what I want, is the Disneyland entrance, even I have to be able to justify to myself, is it the right thing for the neighborhood? If I don't want lifeguards, you know, I may hate the idea of lifeguards, but I need to make a responsible decision for it. A playground is kind of in that area. Regardless of my personal opinions on the playground, whether I want it or don't want it, I have to listen to the neighborhood on any votes that I make. So there's a lot of decisions being made, and I realize there's a lot of people who want to know, why don't we come to everybody with every little thing that we're doing? But if you think things move slowly now, imagine what it would be like if we brought everything to the neighborhood. And that goes true for the budget as well. Whereas we could have a board meeting where people may all come. December's meeting could have been full of people, and they would have heard us talking about the budget, and even though they hadn't pre-planned time like they're supposed to, we would have made time for people to talk. And I could have listened all night long to people stand up and make impassioned pleas for why they didn't have $2.20 for a single-family home for the next quarter, or why, regardless of the value, it shouldn't happen because when they moved in, they were told this was going to be the price they paid, or that they just didn't like the idea of raising dues because it sets a precedent, which it should set a precedent. If dues need to go up, dues need to go up. But I could have listened to impassioned pleas all night long, and I still would have voted to put that through. And you know, and I nobody, there's only a few people there, but I'll tell you right now, I didn't vote either way for the dues increase. The president of the board sits there at the table and calls out the motions, and then 4 board members vote. And if it's a tie, then I've got to vote. And sometimes I'll ceremoniously raise my hand to vote and say aye or something like that. But for the most count, or most part, I don't actually vote on things too often in a board meeting. And so I didn't actually vote on the dues increase. But I will tell you right now, I'm 100% for the 1.57% increase. It was absolutely, absolutely the right thing to do if we wanted to have the budget that we have next year. And we wanted to have that budget. And that's every single penny of it, right down to the $8,000 that was approved for one of the different expenses. I forget in here, there were some expenses that were raised up. It's hard to go through them right now, but essentially every penny of it, we wanted to have it set aside. That's just the way it goes. So for 2015, if there's something in the budget that you don't like, when you look at the budget report that we put out, if there's something that you feel like we're overspending on, and that could include any of the contracts, all of our contracts, and I want to make more things available on the website. It's just hard to do because you have to understand we don't always have the time for it. Like everybody always says, I don't have the time for it. We are each burning up our time doing things for the neighborhood and doing things for ourselves, and we want to make more things available. We truly do. We just haven't had the time. If you want to see what the landscaping contract is, now understand if after watching this video, half the people in the neighborhood call AMG and say, hey, I want a copy of all our contracts, it's going to take a while. So what I'd like to do is get that stuff uploaded to the website for easy viewing so that people can have access to it whenever they want. But you have access to all those things. If you think we're paying too much for the landscaping contract, for instance, because I think we are, then you have every right to to talk about that and to come to a meeting about that. But you don't even have to wait for a meeting. You could just catch me sometime and say, hey Rob, can I talk to you about a landscaping contract? My brother's a landscaper and he's walked around the neighborhood and looked and we're paying too much. Let's find ways to save money. That's what the board does. That's our goal, I think, is to find ways to save money and provide more and more things to the neighborhood. So I'm always open to that, and I want that, and the entire board does. But we just can't do everything for everyone. So look at the budget for 2015. If there are things in there, if you think we're spending too much money on the social budget, then feel free to tell us next year. If a majority of the neighborhood doesn't want us to spend the money that we're spending on social events, then we'll cut the budget down. Now that may mean no water slide events and things like that. And you have to remember we have probably over 100 and some kids in the neighborhood. So there's things that we want to do as board members. Some of us have kids, some of us don't. And we want to do things for the kids in the neighborhood. There's also things we want to do for the adults of the neighborhood. That Oktoberfest chili cook-off thing was a huge success on a minimal amount of money spent. And I foresee nothing better, than moving that forward. I've talked to a bunch of different people in the neighborhood. Rob's big dream for the neighborhood is a bigger and bigger kind of festival type event every year. I'd love that to grow. I drove to McAdenville last night and drove through the Christmas lights, and I'm sitting there looking and I'm like, it's just a bunch of people putting Christmas lights up. There's no reason our neighborhood can't become that kind of an attraction. Not that we want thousands of cars driving through our neighborhood, but you know what I mean. You should be able to enjoy your neighborhood. We shouldn't have to go 50 miles to go see things that are interesting and be a part of things. We should be able to have that in our own neighborhood. This is our little village. So let's make it better. Let's do things with it. That's my dream for the neighborhood. That's the whole reason I'm interested in being on board. I'd like to see the money spent in such a way that the neighborhood grows in a positive way. Because as of right now, I have no plans to move. I moved here hoping to make this my last home that we purchase. So I'm here for the long term, and I want things to be better for the neighborhood. So I apologize for the length of the video and for, it's not a professional video. I've never claimed to be a professional with any of these things that I put out, but I want to give people the opportunity to read and see and have as much info as possible. I didn't sit down with a script today to talk to you. I'm just bringing you my thoughts. I'm definitely available though if anybody has any questions, if you want to put anything out there, and if I can figure out how to do it, I'll put a little ticker on here explaining it. But we're on nextdoor.com. Nextdoor, if you've not looked at it, it's kind of like Facebook without all your personal information being out there. I actually like it a whole lot more than Facebook. It's just not as used, but for the most part, we keep Nextdoor. It's very maintained. The HOA started our Nextdoor page, and it works just off of our neighborhood. You're locked into the boundaries of this neighborhood. I spent a lot of time with the Nextdoor staff putting in our addresses properly. There's still some little mistakes in there, so if you find a mistake you can't get added in because the person before you that lived there was in there, then you need to email their support people. If you can't get any help through that, let me know. I'll help you out. But Nextdoor is a great little alert system. Police departments around the country are trying to get kind of involved with it because you can do crime bulletins and updates and things like that, and it's very useful for keeping people kind of in touch with each other. We can send out emergency alerts. If you come out first thing in the morning and find your car broke into at 2 o'clock in the morning because you were leaving for work early, and you send out a Nextdoor alert saying, hey, my car is broke into, and 3 other people wake up in the middle of the night and go to check their cars, somebody might see the guy running off who broke into another car, and it comes in rashes like that. So it's very useful. It's a great tool. So if you go to nextdoor.com, sign up there. It's house specific. If it doesn't allow you to get in right away, I have the ability to check you, and if I know who you are, I'll add you in. If I don't, I may come knocking on your door to meet you. I've met several neighbors that way. Facebook is still available. There's a private forum, Almond Glen Friends is what it's called, Almond Glen Friends. So it's Facebook. Just go on there and search for Almond Glen Friends. Or if you want to go out on a limb a little bit and you're not really sure how to find it, just go over and meet a couple of your neighbors on either side of you. If one of them's on Facebook, friend them, and then you can find it through that way. So, and then you get to meet a neighbor, right? Then the other thing is you can also check out our website, which hopefully you ended up on the website, and that's how you ended up here today. But it's www.almondglenhoa.org, O-R-G, almondglenhoa.org. So go there. I try to put as much information as I can on there. That website is probably right now 99% Rob's blog, I think is what Alicia's referred to it before us. So go there to get information. We also send out newsletters every once in a while by email, so make sure we've got your email. You can go on the Almond Glen website and sign up for the newsletter. We don't send a lot out, but when we do, it's usually some sort of an update telling you about something that's going on in the neighborhood. We also keep your email addresses on file with the management company, so every once in a while they'll try to reach out to you if you call for some reason, or if you've registered with the website, which everybody should be registered to the website because that's where you can get your dues information. But amgworld.com, I believe it is, and I'll double check. If again, I'll put it down here if I can figure out how to do it. But I think it's amgworld.com. That information, or .net, that information will put you into our specific page, and if you don't have your login, call Danielle, get that information. Danielle Rudisil is our manager, and she can help you out with that. Get yourself set up with that website. There's also the mailings we send out. If you get something in the mail from the Almond Glen Homeowners Association or AMG, or just, you know, if it's a piece of paper that comes from us, we really try not to send too many of them out because that costs a lot of money. But if you get something in the mail from us, it's important. You need to open it. Your house can be foreclosed on if you don't pay your dues. So knowing that kind of information, you wouldn't throw away your bank statements and not check to make sure that your bank payments are going through. So there could be a mess up in the system and your dues aren't getting paid. And I've had it in the neighborhood. Some people don't pay attention to their bank accounts, and they don't realize they've not been charged for dues for 3-4 quarters, or in the case of some of the townhomes, months and months. And then when we contact them, they say, oh my gosh, I had no idea, I thought it was automatically withdrawn. So, and we're going to go through that right now because there's a lot of people in the neighborhood who will not read their information, won't get their emails, won't pay any attention. They won't know the dues have gone up $2.20, or in the townhomes case, whatever that equals out to. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. And they'll be behind on their dues, and we'll be trying to contact them, and I'm going to have to go around and knock on doors and try to get people so that I can tell them, hey, the dues went up, you need to pay more money, and get yourself caught up. So Facebook, Nextdoor, the website, I think I've touched on everything. I'll add something in. If there's not, I'll add in a page here at the end that kind of reminds you. Again, I'm always available. You can call me, you can swing by and knock on my door. You can email us at almondglenhoa@gmail.com. We're available. We are listening. Even if we're not doing what you want, please remember, in the end, no matter how angry you are about one particular event, you're one person. It may be that the majority of the neighborhood just doesn't agree with you, but I always try to listen more to the one person who doesn't agree with something as opposed to the 10 people who do like it, because I want to know what the problem is. If a majority likes something, are you just being unreasonable, or do you have a legitimate concern? And I want to really figure that out. So keep in mind that, though, usually the first time people pay attention to what's going on in the association is when something they don't like is going on. Before that, they usually don't care, and they think everybody's crazy about the homeowners association. But then the reality is, it's just that nothing mattered to you before. We were doing everything you liked, or you didn't necessarily mind what we were doing, and now we've done something that you don't like. So talk with us if something's going on. Find out what's going on. Don't just assume that we don't like you or we don't care about your thoughts. We will listen. We really will. So that's it. I've gone too long. Again, I apologize for the length of the video. I'll be surprised if anybody watches the whole thing through, but thank you if you did watch the entire thing through. Thank you very much for listening and for taking the time. That matters to me more than you can possibly know.